The scream pierced through the desert twilight like a knife, raw and desperate, and Samuel Quinn pulled his horse to such an abrupt halt that dust billowed around them both. He sat frozen in his saddle, the reins tight in his calloused hands, listening with every fiber of his being to determine if his mind had conjured ghosts in this desolate stretch between Douglas, Arizona, and the Mexican border, or if someone truly needed help out here where the saguaros stood like silent witnesses to human suffering. There it came again, muffled but unmistakable. A woman crying out for help somewhere to his left where the rocky outcropping rose against the darkening sky like a jagged scar. Samuel was off his horse before conscious thought caught up with instinct, his boots hitting the hard, packed earth as he called out into the growing shadows. "Hello, where are you?" "Here, please, I am here. The rocks, they fell on me." The voice was young, strained with pain and fear, and it came from a spot where Samuel could see, even in the fading light of this May evening in 1883, that part of the hillside had given way. Boulders the size of freight wagons had tumbled down, along with countless smaller stones, creating a chaotic pile of limestone and sandstone that looked like the earth itself had vomited up its innards. Samuel ran toward the rockslide, his heart hammering against his ribs. He was 30 years old, had worked cattle drives from Texas to Montana, had faced down rustlers and survived a bullet wound that still ached when storms rolled in. But nothing had ever made his blood run cold quite like the sound of that woman's voice calling from beneath tons of unforgiving stone. "Keep talking to me," he shouted as he reached the edge of the debris field. "I need to find exactly where you are." "I can see a small opening, a crack in the rocks above me," she called back, and he could hear her struggling to keep her voice steady. "There is light coming through. I am trapped from the waist down and I cannot move my legs." Samuel's eyes scanned the tumbled stones frantically, and then he saw it, a narrow gap between two massive boulders where the faintest hint of fabric, something pale blue, was visible in the dimness. He scrambled over the rocks, ignoring the way smaller stones shifted treacherously under his weight, until he could drop to his knees beside the opening. "I can see you," he said, peering down into the darkness. "Can you see me?" A face appeared in the shadows below, dirt smeared and framed by dark hair that had come loose from its pins. Her eyes were wide with fear but also with desperate hope, and in that moment, Samuel Quinn knew he would move every damned rock on this hillside with his bare hands if that was what it took. "Yes, I see you," she whispered. "My name is Penelope Martinez. Please, you have to help me. I have been here since this morning and I thought no one would come." "I am Samuel Quinn, and I am going to get you out," he told her, his voice firm with a promise he intended to keep or die trying. "How badly are you hurt? Can you feel your legs at all?" Penelope's face crumpled for a moment before she fought back the tears. "I cannot feel them. There is so much weight on me. I was trying to take a shortcut home to Douglas after visiting my aunt in Agua Prieta, and my horse spooked at something. I fell, and then I heard this terrible grinding sound, and the whole hillside just came down on me." Samuel assessed the situation with the practiced eye of a man who had spent years solving problems in the wilderness. The rock formation was unstable, that much was clear, and any attempt to simply pull her free could bring more stones crashing down. He would need to carefully remove the debris piece by piece, creating a path to reach her, and then figure out how to lift the weight off her legs without crushing her in the process. "Miss Martinez, I need you to listen to me very carefully," Samuel said. "This is going to take time. I am going to have to move these rocks slowly and carefully because if I rush, I could make things worse. You understand?" "Yes," Penelope said, her voice small but determined. "I understand. I have waited this long. I can wait longer if you are really going to help me." "I am not going anywhere," Samuel promised. "But it is getting dark, and I need to set up some light so I can work. I am going to step away for just a few minutes to get supplies from my horse. I will be right back." The fear that flashed across her face nearly broke his heart. "You promise you will come back, on my life," Samuel said solemnly. "I am going to get you out of there, Miss Martinez. That is a promise." He moved as quickly as he dared back to his horse, Thunder, who stood patiently waiting where Samuel had left him. From his saddlebags, Samuel retrieved the oil lantern he always carried, matches, his canteen of water, some strips of dried beef, and a length of rope. He also grabbed the folding shovel he used for digging fire pits, and the small pickaxe that had come in handy more times than he could count on the trail. When he returned to the rockslide, the last of the daylight was bleeding out of the sky, and stars were beginning to appear overhead like scattered diamonds on black velvet. Samuel lit the lantern and hung it from a sturdy piece of rock that jutted out near the opening where Penelope was trapped. The warm glow illuminated her face, and he could see now that she was young, probably no more than 22 or 23, with delicate features and eyes the color of strong coffee. "There now," Samuel said, settling himself as comfortably as possible on the rocks. "That is better. Can you drink some water if I pass my canteen down to you?" "Yes, please," Penelope said, and he could hear the desperate thirst in her voice. She had been trapped here for hours without water under the brutal Arizona sun, and it was a miracle she was conscious at all. Samuel carefully lowered the canteen on a length of rope, and he watched as she grasped it with trembling hands and drank deeply. When she had taken several long swallows, he pulled it back up. "Not too much at once," he cautioned gently. "You will make yourself sick." "We will get you more in a little while." "Thank you," Penelope said, and he could see tears tracking through the dirt on her cheeks. "Thank you for being here. Thank you for not leaving me." "Hey now," Samuel said softly. "None of that. You save your strength." "I am going to start working on clearing these rocks now. Some of them might shift and make noise, but do not worry. I know what I am doing." It was perhaps an overstatement, but Samuel had spent enough years in the wilderness to have developed good instincts for this sort of thing. He began with the smallest rocks, the ones he could lift and toss aside without disturbing the larger structure. Each stone he removed revealed more of the precarious architecture of the collapse, and he began to understand the challenge before him. A large boulder, easily 5 feet across, was resting on top of several smaller rocks, creating a kind of bridge over where Penelope lay trapped. If he could shore up the sides and remove the smaller rocks beneath it, he might be able to create enough space to pull her free. But if he made a mistake, if he pulled the wrong stone or shifted the weight incorrectly, that boulder would come crashing down and crush her. As Samuel worked, carefully testing each rock before moving it, he talked to Penelope to keep her conscious and calm. "So you were visiting your aunt in Agua Prieta. Do you have family in Douglas?" Penelope's voice drifted up from below, tired but responsive. "Yes, my parents have a small ranch outside of town. We raise horses, mostly. My father supplies them to the army post and to the mining companies. I am their only child, and they are probably worried sick by now. I was supposed to be home before supper." "They will be glad to see you safe," Samuel said, grunting as he levered a particularly stubborn rock out of place. "What made your horse spook?" "I do not know," Penelope admitted. "Maybe a snake or a coyote. It happened so fast. One moment I was riding along, thinking about how pretty the sunset would be, and the next I was on the ground, and the world was falling on top of me." Samuel paused in his work, wiping sweat from his forehead despite the cooling night air. "You are lucky that cave of rocks formed around you. If you had been just a few feet in any direction, you would have been crushed outright." "I know," Penelope said quietly. "I have been lying here all day thinking about that. Thinking about dying here alone with no one even knowing where to look for me. And then I heard your horse and I screamed as loud as I could and you heard me. You actually heard me." There was such wonder in her voice, such gratitude, that Samuel felt a strange tightness in his chest. "I am glad I was passing by," he said. "I had been visiting a friend's ranch up north, and I decided to take the back trail home to my place. I guess fate wanted me on this road tonight." "Do you believe in fate, Mr. Quinn?" Samuel considered the question as he worked another stone free. "I believe that sometimes things happen for a reason we cannot see right away. Whether that is fate or God or just blind luck, I cannot say. But I am here, and you are going to be all right. That is what matters." The hours crawled by with agonizing slowness. Samuel's hands grew raw and bloody from handling the rough stones. His back ached from the awkward positions he had to contort himself into to reach certain rocks, and his muscles screamed in protest at the repetitive lifting and shifting. But he did not stop. He could not stop, not when Penelope's life depended on his endurance. Around midnight, Samuel had cleared enough of the smaller debris that he could see more clearly what was pinning Penelope. The large boulder he had identified earlier was indeed the main problem. It was resting on two smaller rocks, which were in turn pressing down on her legs. If he could get under that boulder somehow and lift it, even just an inch or two, he might be able to pull those smaller rocks free and then pull Penelope out. "Miss Martinez," Samuel called down. "How are you feeling? Still with me?" "I am here," Penelope responded, though her voice was weaker now, thready with exhaustion and pain. "I am so cold, Mr. Quinn. Why am I so cold when it was so hot earlier?" Samuel's jaw tightened. She was going into shock, her body's response to trauma and stress. He needed to work faster, but he also needed to be careful. One wrong move would kill her just as surely as leaving her here. "Your body is tired from fighting through this," Samuel explained, keeping his voice calm and reassuring. "When I get you out, we will get you warm again. I have a bedroll on my horse. We will wrap you up good and proper." "Tell me about yourself, Mr. Quinn," Penelope said, and Samuel could hear that she was trying to stay conscious, trying to keep her mind focused on something other than the pain and cold. "You said you have a place near here." Samuel wedged his pickaxe under the edge of the large boulder, testing its stability. "I have a small ranch about 10 miles north of Douglas. Nothing fancy, just a few hundred acres with a creek running through it. I raise cattle, sell them to the railroad when they come through. It is a good life, quiet and honest." "Are you married, Mr. Quinn?" The question caught Samuel off guard, and he paused in his work. "No, Miss Martinez. I am not married. I came out to Arizona Territory 5 years ago after my parents passed away back in Missouri. I wanted to make a fresh start, build something of my own. I guess I have been too busy working the ranch to think much about settling down with anyone." "That is sad," Penelope murmured. "Everyone should have someone. What about you?" Samuel asked, driving a flat rock under the pickaxe to create a fulcrum. "Is there a young man waiting for you back in Douglas?" "No," Penelope said, and there was something wistful in her voice. "My father is very protective. He says I am too young to be thinking about marriage, that I should help him with the ranch and not worry about such things. But I am 23 years old, Mr. Quinn. Most of the girls I grew up with are already married with babies." "23 is not too old," Samuel said firmly. "And your father probably just wants to make sure you find the right person. A woman like you, someone with courage and strength, you deserve someone special. You can tell I have courage and strength from seeing me trapped under rocks and crying for help." Penelope asked, and Samuel was surprised to hear a hint of humor in her voice despite everything. He grinned in the lantern light. "Miss Martinez, you have been trapped under these rocks for probably 16 hours or more, injured and alone, and you are still talking to me, still fighting to stay conscious. That takes more courage and strength than most people will ever need in their entire lives. So yes, I can tell." There was a long pause, and then Penelope said softly, "Thank you, Mr. Quinn. Thank you for saying that, and thank you for working so hard to save me. I can hear how tired you are." Samuel did not bother denying it. His whole body felt like it had been beaten with hammers, and his hands were so raw that every rock he touched sent fresh jolts of pain through his nerves. But he had made a promise, and Samuel Quinn did not break his promises. He repositioned himself, braced his legs against a solid rock, and began to push down on the pickaxe handle, using it as a lever to try to lift the boulder. At first, nothing happened. The weight was simply too much. But Samuel gritted his teeth and threw every ounce of strength he had left into the effort, and slowly, agonizingly, the boulder began to shift. "Miss Martinez," Samuel gasped out, "I am lifting the rock now. When I tell you, I need you to try to pull yourself forward toward my voice. Can you do that?" "I will try," Penelope said, and he could hear the fear and hope warring in her voice. Samuel's muscles were screaming, his vision starting to blur with the effort, but he kept pushing, kept lifting. The boulder rose another inch, and he could see the smaller rocks beneath it start to shift. "Now," Samuel shouted, "pull yourself forward now." He heard Penelope cry out, a sound of both pain and effort, and then he saw movement in the gap below. She was pulling herself forward with her arms, dragging her body inch by painful inch toward freedom. The smaller rocks tumbled away as the weight came off them, and Samuel could see her legs now, bloodied and bruised but miraculously not visibly broken. "Keep coming," Samuel urged, his arms shaking with the strain of holding the boulder up. "You are almost there. Just a little more." With a final desperate lunge, Penelope pulled herself clear of the rocks, and Samuel immediately released the pickaxe. The boulder crashed back down with a thunderous boom that sent dust and small stones flying, but Penelope was free, lying on the open ground at the base of the rockslide, gasping for breath. Samuel half slid, half fell down to where she lay, his body finally giving in to exhaustion. For a long moment they both just lay there, breathing hard, covered in dust and blood and sweat, alive. "We did it," Samuel finally said, his voice hoarse. "You are out. You are safe." Penelope turned her head to look at him, and even in the dim light of the lantern above them, Samuel could see the tears streaming down her face. "You saved my life," she whispered. "You worked all night to save my life." Samuel forced himself to sit up, every muscle protesting. "Can you feel your legs now? Can you move them?" Penelope tentatively tried to move her feet, and Samuel saw them shift slightly. "Yes," she said, wonder in her voice. "Yes, I can feel them. They hurt terribly, but I can feel them." "That is good," Samuel said, relief flooding through him. "That means there is no permanent damage to your spine. Your legs were probably just compressed, cutting off the blood flow and the nerves. They are going to hurt like hell for a while, excuse my language, but you should be able to walk again once they heal." He carefully ran his hands over her legs, checking for breaks. Penelope winced and gasped at his touch, but she did not cry out. Samuel could feel swelling and some cuts that would need cleaning, but as far as he could tell, nothing was broken. It was another miracle to add to the list. "I am going to carry you to my horse," Samuel said, "and then we are going to get you back to Douglas and to a doctor. Your parents are probably out of their minds with worry." "Wait," Penelope said, reaching out to grab his arm. "Just wait one moment, let me catch my breath." "And let you catch yours. You look like you are about to fall over." Samuel could not argue with that. He was utterly spent, more exhausted than he had ever been in his life. He sat back against a rock, and Penelope shifted closer to him, seeking warmth. Without thinking about it, Samuel pulled off his vest and draped it over her shoulders, then wrapped an arm around her to share his body heat. "Better?" he asked. "Much," Penelope said, and he felt her relax slightly against him. They sat like that for several minutes, just breathing, just being alive. The night sky above them was spectacular. The Milky Way splashed across the darkness like someone had thrown a bucket of paint across a canvas. "I will never forget this night," Penelope said quietly. "I will never forget what you did for me, Samuel Quinn." Hearing his name on her lips sent a strange flutter through Samuel's chest. "I am just glad I was here," he said. "I cannot imagine what would have happened if someone had not come along." "I would have died," Penelope said simply. "I was already so weak. By tomorrow, I would have been gone. You saved my life, and I am going to spend the rest of my days being grateful for that." Samuel looked down at her, at this brave, beautiful woman who had survived something that would have broken most people. In the lantern light, with her hair wild around her face and her eyes shining with tears and gratitude, she was the most captivating thing he had ever seen. "Come on," he said gently, pushing aside the unexpected feeling stirring in his chest. "Let us get you home." He stood, swaying slightly with exhaustion, and then carefully lifted Penelope into his arms. She was lighter than he expected, probably because she had gone without food and water for so long. She wrapped her arms around his neck, and Samuel carried her slowly across the rocky terrain to where Thunder still waited patiently. Getting Penelope onto the horse was a challenge, but Samuel managed to lift her into the saddle and then swing up behind her. He wrapped one arm around her waist to keep her secure and took the reins with his other hand. "Hold on to me," he told her. "I am going to go as gently as I can, but some of this trail is rough." Penelope leaned back against his chest, and Samuel felt her body relax into his. They rode through the night toward Douglas, moving slowly to avoid jostling her injured legs. As they traveled, Penelope drifted in and out of consciousness, and each time she woke, Samuel talked to her, keeping her grounded. "Tell me about your horses," he said during one of her wakeful moments. "What kind does your father breed?" "Mostly quarter horses," Penelope murmured. "Good, strong ranch horses. My father has a stallion he brought up from Mexico, beautiful chestnut with a white blaze. He has produced some of the finest foals in the territory. I help train them, teach them to trust people, to be gentle." "You train horses?" Samuel asked, impressed. "Since I was a little girl," Penelope said. "My mother says I have a gift with animals. They trust me. I can gentile the wildest horse if you give me enough time and patience." "I would like to see that," Samuel said, and he meant it. He found himself wanting to know more about this woman, wanting to see her in her element, healthy and whole and doing what she loved. "Maybe you will," Penelope said softly. "Maybe when I am healed, you could bring some of your cattle to our ranch. We could work out a trade, our horses for your beef. My father is always looking for good business partners." "I would like that," Samuel agreed. "I would like that very much." As they rode, the sky began to lighten in the east, the stars fading as dawn approached. By the time they reached the outskirts of Douglas, the sun was just beginning to peek over the horizon, painting the desert in shades of gold and rose. The Martinez Ranch was not hard to find. It was one of the larger properties on the edge of town, with a neat adobe house and several corrals filled with horses. As Samuel rode up the main path, he saw a man come running out of the barn, shouting back toward the house. "Maria! Maria, come quick! Someone is here!" A woman emerged from the house, and the moment she saw Penelope slumped in Samuel's arms, she screamed and ran toward them. The man, who Samuel assumed was Penelope's father, reached them first, his face a mask of fear and relief. "Penelope, My God, Penelope, what happened? She was caught in a rockslide, Samuel explained quickly as he carefully lowered Penelope down into her father's waiting arms. I found her trapped last night and worked to get her free. Her legs are injured but not broken as far as I can tell. She needs a doctor. Penelope's mother was crying, touching her daughter's face, her hair, as if she could not quite believe she was real. We have been searching everywhere, she sobbed. We had men out all night looking for her. We thought the worst. I am all right, Mama, Penelope said weakly. This man, Samuel Quinn, he saved me. He worked all night to move the rocks and get me out. If not for him, I would still be there. I would be dead. Penelope's father looked up at Samuel with eyes full of tears. You saved my daughter's life, he said, his voice breaking. How can I ever repay you? No payment is necessary, Samuel said, swaying slightly in his saddle. Now that Penelope was safe and with her family, the adrenaline that had been keeping him upright was draining away, leaving him hollow and shaking. I am just glad I found her in time. You need a doctor yourself, Penelope's mother said, staring at Samuel's bloody hands and dirt-covered clothes. You look ready to collapse. Please come inside. Let us care for you as you cared for our daughter. Samuel wanted to refuse, wanted to just ride home to his own ranch and sleep for a week, but his body made the decision for him. As he tried to dismount, his legs gave out, and he would have fallen if Penelope's father had not caught him. I have you, son, the older man said firmly. You are not going anywhere. You saved my daughter, and now we are going to take care of you. That is final. Samuel did not have the strength to argue. He let himself be supported into the house, where Penelope had already been laid on a sofa in the main room. Her mother was gently cleaning her face while sending one of the ranch hands to fetch the doctor. Put him in the guest room, Penelope's mother directed. And someone bring warm water and bandages. Look at his hands, they are torn to pieces. Samuel found himself being guided into a small, neat bedroom and lowered onto a bed that felt like heaven after the night he had endured. A young woman, one of the household staff, brought in a basin of warm water and began to carefully clean his hands. The pain was intense, but Samuel barely felt it. He was too tired, too overwhelmed by everything that had happened. Penelope's mother appeared in the doorway. The doctor is coming, she said. He will look at both of you, Mr. Quinn, my husband, and I cannot thank you enough for what you did. Our Penelope is everything to us. If we had lost her. Her voice broke, and she had to pause to compose herself. You are a hero, Mr. Quinn, a true hero. I am no hero, madam, Samuel said tiredly. I am just a man who happened to be in the right place at the right time. No, Penelope's mother said firmly. You are much more than that. You worked through the entire night, destroying your own hands, risking your own life to save someone you did not even know. That is the definition of a hero, Mr. Quinn, whether you want to call yourself one or not. Before Samuel could respond, the doctor arrived, a brisk older gentleman who immediately took charge. He examined Penelope first, declaring that her legs were badly bruised and strained but should heal completely with rest and care. Then he turned his attention to Samuel, clicking his tongue in disapproval at the state of his hands. You have done quite a number on yourself, the doctor said as he cleaned and bandaged the worst of the cuts. These are going to hurt for a good while, and you are going to need to keep them clean so infection does not set in. I am going to leave some salve with Mrs. Martinez. You need to apply it twice a day. I will be going home soon, Samuel protested weakly. I have a ranch to run. You are not going anywhere for at least a few days, the doctor said sternly. You are exhausted, possibly concussed from all that heavy lifting, and your body needs rest. The Martinezes have graciously agreed to let you stay here while you recover, and I strongly suggest you accept their hospitality. Samuel wanted to argue, but his eyes were already closing against his will. The bed was so comfortable, and his body was so desperately tired. He felt someone pull a blanket over him, heard the doctor giving instructions to Penelope's mother, and then he was asleep, falling into the deep, dreamless sleep of utter exhaustion. When Samuel woke, it was dark outside again, and he had no idea how long he had been asleep. His whole body ached, and his hands throbbed with a dull, persistent pain. He tried to sit up and groaned at the effort it took. "Easy there," a voice said from the shadows, and Samuel turned his head to see Penelope's father sitting in a chair beside the bed. "You have been asleep for almost 18 hours. It is evening again." 18 hours, Samuel said, shocked. "I have never slept that long in my life." "Your body needed it," the older man said. "I am Carlos Martinez, by the way. I do not think we were properly introduced in all the chaos this morning." "Samuel Quinn," Samuel said, extending his bandaged hand awkwardly. Carlos took it carefully, mindful of the injuries. "My wife has made dinner," Carlos said. "If you feel up to it, you should eat something. And Penelope has been asking about you every time she wakes. She wants to thank you properly." Samuel's heart did an odd little jump at the mention of Penelope. "How is she doing?" "Much better," Carlos said, his face relaxing into a relieved smile. "The doctor was right. Her legs are healing well. She is in pain, but she is alive and she is going to be fine. Thanks to you, Mr. Quinn. Thanks to you." Samuel let Carlos help him out of bed and into the main room where a table was set with a substantial meal. Penelope was lying on the sofa, her legs propped up on pillows, covered with a light blanket. Her face had been cleaned, her hair was brushed and braided, and she looked like a completely different person from the terrified, dirt-covered woman he had pulled from the rocks. When she saw Samuel, her face lit up with a smile that made his breath catch. "Mr. Quinn, you are awake. How are you feeling?" "I should be asking you that," Samuel said, settling carefully into a chair near her sofa. "You are the one who was trapped under half a mountain." "I am sore and bruised, but I am alive," Penelope said, her eyes shining with emotion. "And I am alive because of you. I have been lying here trying to think of how to thank you, but there are no words big enough." "You do not need to thank me," Samuel said, but Penelope shook her head vehemently. "Yes, I do. You could have ridden past. You could have convinced yourself that you imagined my cries. You could have looked at those rocks and decided it was too dangerous, too much work. But you did not do any of those things. You stopped. You stayed. You worked through the entire night with your bare hands to set me free. That is not something I will ever forget, Samuel Quinn, and it is not something I can ever adequately repay." The use of his first name sent that same flutter through Samuel's chest that he had felt the night before. He looked at Penelope, really looked at her, and felt something shift inside him. This was not just relief that he had saved someone's life. This was something deeper, something that scared him a little with its sudden intensity. "I am just glad you are all right," Samuel said quietly. Penelope's mother bustled in with plates of food, and the conversation shifted to lighter topics as they ate. Carlos asked Samuel about his ranch, and they talked about cattle and the challenges of making a living in the harsh Arizona territory. Penelope listened intently, occasionally asking questions, and Samuel found himself enjoying the easy conversation, the warmth of this family's home. Over the next 3 days, as Samuel's hands healed and his strength returned, he found himself spending more and more time talking with Penelope. Her parents insisted he stay until the doctor cleared him to travel, and Samuel found he was in no hurry to leave. He would sit beside Penelope's sofa, and they would talk for hours about everything and nothing. She told him about growing up on the ranch, about the horses she had trained, about the time she had broken her arm falling out of a tree when she was 10. He told her about his childhood in Missouri, about his parents and how hard it had been to lose them both within 6 months of each other, about the decision to come west and start over. "Were you running from something?" Penelope asked one afternoon as they sat together. "Or running towards something?" Samuel considered the question. "A little of both, I suppose. After my parents died, there was nothing holding me in Missouri. The farm was sold to pay debts, and I had no siblings, no other close family. I felt like I was drifting, like I had no purpose. I wanted to go somewhere new, somewhere I could build something that was entirely mine. Arizona seemed like the right place. It is hard here, but it is also beautiful, and there is room to grow, room to become whoever you want to be." "I understand that," Penelope said. "My parents came here from Mexico when I was a baby. They wanted a better life, more opportunities. They worked so hard to build this ranch, to make a place for themselves. Sometimes I think about what it must have been like for them, starting over in a new country with a new baby, not knowing if they would succeed or fail." "They clearly succeeded," Samuel said, gesturing around at the comfortable home and the prosperous ranch visible through the windows. "Yes," Penelope agreed. "But it was not easy. My father talks about those early years sometimes, about how they almost lost everything more than once. But they kept going, kept fighting. They taught me that anything worth having is worth working for, worth fighting for." "That is a good lesson," Samuel said. "Your parents did well raising you. You are a remarkable woman, Penelope Martinez." Penelope blushed, a pretty pink color rising in her cheeks. "You are only saying that because you saw me at my worst and I somehow managed not to completely fall apart." "I am saying it because it is true," Samuel said firmly. "And I think I would have thought so even if we had met under normal circumstances. There is something about you, a strength and a kindness that shines through. Your parents should be very proud." "They are," Penelope said softly. "They tell me all the time. Sometimes I think they are too proud, too protective. They want to keep me safe and close to home. But after what happened, I suppose I understand their fear a little better. The world is a dangerous place, and terrible things can happen when you least expect them." "That is true," Samuel agreed. "But you cannot live your life in fear. You have to keep moving forward, keep living, or what is the point?" Penelope looked at him with those deep brown eyes, and Samuel felt like she was seeing straight into his soul. "Is that what you are doing, Samuel Quinn?" "Moving forward, I am trying," Samuel admitted. "Some days are easier than others. But yes, I am trying to build a life worth living, a life that would make my parents proud." "I think you are succeeding," Penelope said gently. "Any parents would be proud to call you their son. What you did for me, what you risked for a stranger, that speaks to the kind of man you are, a good man, a truly good man." Samuel felt his throat tighten with unexpected emotion. He had been alone for so long, focused entirely on survival and building his ranch, that he had forgotten what it felt like to have someone see him, really see him, and appreciate what they found. It was both wonderful and terrifying. On the fourth day, the doctor returned to check on both his patients. He declared Penelope well on the road to recovery, and said she should be able to walk with assistance within another week or so. He also pronounced Samuel fit to travel, though he cautioned him to take it easy for a while longer and to keep treating his hands with the salve. "I should head home," Samuel said after the doctor left, though the words felt heavy in his mouth. "I have been away from my ranch too long, and there is work that needs doing." "Of course," Carlos said, but Samuel could see the disappointment on his face. "But you must come back to visit. You are always welcome here, Mr. Quinn, always. You are part of our family now, whether you like it or not." Penelope's mother nodded enthusiastically. "And you must let us know if you need anything. Food, supplies, help with your ranch, anything at all. We owe you a debt we can never repay." "You do not owe me anything," Samuel protested, but he was touched by their generosity. "But I would like to visit again, if that is all right. I have enjoyed getting to know all of you." His eyes went to Penelope as he said this, and he saw her face light up with a smile. "I would like that very much," she said. "I still want to show you our horses properly once I can walk again, and I want to hear more about your ranch. Maybe I could even help you pick out a good horse or two. Every rancher needs good horses." "That would be wonderful," Samuel said, and he meant it with every fiber of his being. When it came time to leave, Samuel found himself strangely reluctant to go. He saddled Thunder, who had been well cared for by the Martinez ranch hands, and prepared to ride out. The entire family came out to see him off, and when he said goodbye to Penelope, she reached up from where she sat in a chair on the porch and took his hand. "Come back soon," she said quietly, her eyes locked on his. "Please." "I will," Samuel promised. "As soon as I get things sorted at my place, I will be back. You can count on it." The ride home felt longer than usual, and Samuel realized it was because he was already thinking about when he could make the trip back to the Martinez ranch. He had work to do, cattle to check on, fences to mend, but his mind kept drifting back to a certain brown-eyed woman with a smile that made his heart race. Over the next 2 weeks, Samuel threw himself into catching up on ranch work. He repaired sections of fence that had been damaged by winter storms, checked on his cattle and moved them to better grazing, cleaned out the barn, and did 100 other small tasks that had been neglected while he was away. His hands healed slowly, the wounds closing and the pain fading to a dull ache. But every night, as he sat alone in his small ranch house eating a simple dinner, he thought about Penelope. He wondered how her recovery was going, whether she was walking yet, whether she thought about him the way he thought about her. He had never felt this way about a woman before, this constant pull, this desire to be near someone, to hear their voice and see their smile. After 2 weeks, Samuel decided he had put it off long enough. He saddled Thunder early one morning and rode toward Douglas, his heart beating faster with every mile. He had told himself he was going to check on Penelope's recovery, to make sure she was healing properly, but he knew the truth. He was going because he could not stay away any longer. When he rode up to the Martinez ranch, it was Penelope herself who came out to greet him, walking carefully with the aid of a cane but walking nonetheless. Her face broke into the most beautiful smile Samuel had ever seen. "Samuel." "You came back. I told you I would," Samuel said, dismounting quickly and moving to her side. "Should you be walking already? Are you sure you are healed enough?" "The doctor said light walking would be good for me," Penelope assured him, "and I was going crazy lying on that sofa all day. I needed to move, needed to feel useful again." She paused, then added shyly, "I have been hoping you would come back soon." "I wanted to come sooner," Samuel admitted, "but I had work that needed doing. I am sorry it took so long." 2 weeks is not so long," Penelope said. "But it felt like forever." They stood there looking at each other, and Samuel felt the air between them crackle with unspoken feelings. Before either of them could say anything else, Carlos emerged from the barn and called out a greeting. "Mr. Quinn, good to see you. Come, I want to show you the new foal that was born last week. He is going to be magnificent." Samuel spent the afternoon at the Martinez ranch, admiring the horses, talking business with Carlos, and enjoying a wonderful meal prepared by Penelope's mother. But the best part was the time he spent with Penelope, walking slowly around the property as she showed him the horses she had trained, telling him about each one's personality and quirks. "This is Luna," Penelope said, running her hand along the neck of a beautiful gray mare. "She was wild when my father brought her in, would not let anyone near her. But I worked with her every day for 3 months, just sitting in her corral, not trying to touch her, just being present. Eventually she got curious and came to me. Now she is as gentle as a lamb. You have a real gift, Samuel said, watching the way the horse nuzzled Penelope's hand, clearly trusting her completely. I think I just have patience, Penelope said. And I understand what it is like to be afraid. When you have been hurt or scared, it takes time to learn to trust again. You cannot rush it. You just have to be present and consistent and let the healing happen in its own time. Samuel had a feeling they were not just talking about horses anymore. Is that how you are feeling? He asked quietly. Still healing from what happened? Penelope was quiet for a moment, absently stroking Luna's mane. I have nightmares sometimes, she admitted. I wake up feeling like I cannot breathe, like there are rocks pressing down on me. And sometimes during the day, I will hear a noise that sounds like rocks shifting, and my heart starts racing. The doctor says it is normal, that it will fade with time. I am sorry, Samuel said, feeling guilty. I wish you had never had to go through that. I do not regret it, Penelope said, turning to look at him with such intensity that Samuel felt his breath catch. If it had not happened, I never would have met you. And meeting you, getting to know you, has been the best thing that has happened to me in years. So no, I do not regret it. Not one bit. Samuel moved closer to her, drawn by the honesty in her eyes. I feel the same way, he confessed. I have not been able to stop thinking about you since the day I left. You are in my mind when I wake up, when I work, when I go to sleep at night. I tell myself I am being foolish, that we barely know each other, but it does not change how I feel. Then maybe we should do something about that, Penelope said softly. Maybe we should get to know each other better. If you want to, that is. I want to, Samuel said immediately. I want that more than anything. And so began a courtship that Samuel knew he would remember for the rest of his life. He rode to the Martinez ranch as often as his own work allowed, sometimes twice a week, sometimes more. He and Penelope would spend hours together, talking, walking, simply being in each other's presence. She showed him more of her horses, taught him some of her training techniques. He took her out in a borrowed wagon to see his ranch, showed her the land he was so proud of, the cattle that were his livelihood. Carlos and Maria watched the growing relationship with obvious approval. Carlos told Samuel privately that he had never seen his daughter so happy, so animated. You are good for her, he said. You brought her back to life in more ways than one. As summer turned to fall, Samuel realized he was deeply, irrevocably in love with Penelope Martinez. It was not just her beauty, though she was beautiful. It was her strength, her kindness, her humor, the way she saw the best in people and animals, the way she had survived something terrible and come out the other side even stronger. She was everything he had never known he wanted, and now that he had found her, he could not imagine his life without her. One evening in late October, as they sat together on the porch of the Martinez house watching the sun set over the desert, Samuel took Penelope's hand in his. His palms were still scarred from that night he had worked to free her, and he knew those scars would be with him for the rest of his life. But he did not mind. They were a reminder of the night that had changed everything. Penelope, he said, his heart pounding so hard he was sure she could hear it. I need to tell you something. She turned to him, her eyes soft in the golden light. What is it, Samuel? I love you, he said simply. I know we have only known each other for 6 months, and maybe some people would say that is not long enough, but I do not care. I know my own heart, and I know that I love you. I love your strength and your courage. I love your kindness and your patience. I love the way you see the world, the way you see me. I love everything about you, and I cannot keep it to myself anymore. Tears were streaming down Penelope's face, but she was smiling, smiling so wide and bright that Samuel felt his own eyes grow damp. I love you too, she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "I have loved you since the night you refused to leave me under those rocks. I have loved you through every visit, every conversation, every moment we have spent together. You are the best man I have ever known, Samuel Quinn, and I love you with all my heart." Samuel pulled her close and kissed her, and it felt like coming home. Everything he had been searching for, everything he had been building toward, it all made sense now. He had come to Arizona looking for a fresh start, looking to build something of his own, and he had found so much more than he ever dreamed possible. He had found love. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless and grinning like fools, Penelope laughed and wiped at her tears. "So what do we do now?" Samuel said. "I go talk to your father and ask his permission to marry you, if you will have me, that is, if you want to be my wife." "Yes," Penelope said immediately. "Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes, I want to be your wife, Samuel. I want to build a life with you, on your ranch or here or wherever we end up. I just want to be with you." Carlos gave his blessing that very night, with tears in his eyes and a firm handshake for Samuel. Maria cried happy tears and immediately started planning a wedding. They were married 2 months later, just before Christmas, in a simple ceremony at the small church in Douglas. Half the town turned out to see the marriage of the rancher who had saved the Martinez daughter from certain death, and the brave young woman who had survived against all odds. Samuel and Penelope moved to Samuel's ranch after the wedding, though they visited the Martinez ranch often. Penelope brought 3 of her trained horses with her as part of her dowry, and she continued to work with horses on their own land, building a small but respected reputation as a trainer. The first year of their marriage was one of hard work and deep happiness. They worked together to improve the ranch, to build it into something sustainable and profitable. Penelope's expertise with horses proved invaluable, and Samuel found that their skills complemented each other perfectly. More than that, they simply enjoyed being together, enjoyed the life they were building side by side. When Penelope discovered she was pregnant in the spring of 1885, Samuel was beside himself with joy. He was going to be a father, and Penelope was going to be a mother, and they were going to raise their child on this land they both loved, surrounded by the family they had created together. Their son was born in November of that year, a healthy baby boy with his mother's dark eyes and his father's strong chin. They named him Matthew, after Samuel's father, and the moment Samuel held his son for the first time, he felt his heart expand in ways he had not known were possible. Penelope was a natural mother, patient and loving, and Samuel marveled at the way she balanced caring for their son with her work with the horses and the ranch. They were partners in every sense of the word, building a life together that was richer and more fulfilling than either of them had ever imagined. As Matthew grew from baby to toddler to young boy, Samuel and Penelope's love only deepened. They weathered droughts and harsh winters, celebrated good years and worked through lean ones, always together, always supporting each other. The scars on Samuel's hands faded to thin white lines, but they never disappeared entirely, a permanent reminder of the night he had found his future wife trapped under fallen rocks and had refused to give up on her. When Matthew was 5 years old, Penelope gave birth to a daughter they named Rose, after Penelope's grandmother. 2 years later, another son arrived whom they called Daniel. The ranch house that had once seemed so empty to Samuel was now filled with the laughter and chaos of children, with the warmth of a family built on love and sacrifice and unwavering commitment. On their 10th anniversary, Samuel and Penelope took an evening to themselves, leaving the children with Penelope's parents for the night. They rode out to the spot where that rockslide had occurred, where their story had truly begun. Someone had cleared away much of the debris over the years, and new plants had started to grow in the disturbed soil. But Samuel could still see exactly where Penelope had been trapped, could still remember the terror and determination of that night. "I think about this place sometimes," Penelope said, standing close to Samuel as they looked at the hillside. "About how different my life would be if you had not come along when you did. I would not have you, would not have our children, would not have this beautiful life we have built together. All because you stopped when you heard my cries. All because you cared enough about a stranger to work through the night to save her." Samuel wrapped his arms around his wife, holding her close. "I do not think I saved you that night," he said. "I think we saved each other. You gave me a purpose I did not even know I was looking for. You gave me a family, a real home, a reason to wake up every morning grateful to be alive. That is not something most people ever find, and I found it all because of you." Penelope turned in his arms and kissed him deeply. "I love you, Samuel Quinn. I have loved you from the moment you promised you would not leave me, and I will love you until the day I die and beyond." "And I love you," Samuel said, "forever." They stood there as the sun set over the Arizona desert. Two people who had found each other in the most unlikely of circumstances and had built something extraordinary together. The Wild West was a hard place, unforgiving and often cruel, but it was also a place where miracles could happen, where lives could change in an instant, where love could bloom even in the harshest of soils. As Samuel and Penelope rode back to their ranch that night, back to their children and their life together, Samuel sent up a silent prayer of thanks to whatever force had guided him down that particular road on that particular night. He had heard her cries from under the fallen rocks. He had worked through the night to set her free. And in doing so, he had set himself free as well, free to love and be loved, free to build a life that mattered, free to be the man he had always wanted to be. The years continued to pass in the rhythm of ranch life. Matthew grew tall and strong, learning to work cattle alongside his father, while Rose showed her mother's gift with horses, spending hours in the corrals gentling and training the young stock. Daniel, the youngest, had a gift for fixing things, always tinkering with tools and equipment, finding ways to make the ranch work more efficiently. Samuel and Penelope watched their children grow with pride and wonder. The ranch prospered under their joint management, becoming known throughout the territory for quality cattle and exceptionally well-trained horses. They added onto the house as the family grew, building new rooms and a larger kitchen where Penelope loved to cook, and the children gathered to do their lessons at the long wooden table Samuel had built with his own hands. Carlos and Maria remained active and involved in their daughter's life, visiting often and doting on their grandchildren. Carlos and Samuel became not just family but true friends, often working together on projects that benefited both ranches. Maria taught Penelope her recipes and her wisdom, passing down generations of knowledge about running a household and raising children in the challenging environment of the Arizona Territory. When Arizona became a state in 1912, Samuel and Penelope celebrated with their grown children and their first grandchild, Matthew's daughter Elena. They stood together on the porch of the ranch house, watching fireworks light up the night sky over Douglas, and marveled at all the changes they had witnessed over the years. "You remember when this was just wilderness?" Penelope asked, leaning against Samuel's shoulder. "When Douglas was barely more than a few buildings and a dream." "I remember," Samuel said, his arm around her waist. "I remember riding through here for the first time and thinking it was the most God-forsaken place I had ever seen. And now look at it. Look at what we built, what so many people built together." "You know what I am most grateful for," Penelope said softly. That I took that shortcut all those years ago, that my horse spooked and I fell and the hillside came down on me. Because as terrible as it was, as much as I suffered, it brought you into my life. And everything good that has happened since, everything beautiful and meaningful, it all stems from that one terrible, wonderful day. Samuel kissed the top of her head, breathing in the scent of her hair, still dark though now threaded with silver. I used to wonder why I decided to take the back trail that night, he admitted. I could have taken the main road. It would have been faster. But something made me choose that route, and I heard you crying out. I have never believed much in fate, but sometimes I think we were meant to find each other that night. That all the pain and fear and hard work was leading us to exactly where we were supposed to be. They celebrated their 25th anniversary with a party that brought together friends and family from all over the territory. The ranch was filled with music and laughter, with children running through the corrals and adults sharing stories and memories. Samuel looked around at all the people gathered, at the life he and Penelope had built together, and felt a contentment so deep it was almost overwhelming. When the party wound down and the last guests had departed, Samuel and Penelope walked out to the small hill behind their house where they liked to sit and watch the sunset. It had become their special place over the years, where they went when they needed to talk or simply be together in silence. 25 years, Penelope said wonderingly. Sometimes it feels like yesterday that you were pulling me out from under those rocks, and sometimes it feels like we have been together forever, like I cannot remember a time when you were not part of my life. I know what you mean, Samuel said. The time has gone so fast, but we have lived so much life in these years. 3 children, 5 grandchildren now, 2 successful ranches, a lifetime of memories. I would not change a single thing. Not even the hard times, Penelope asked. The year the drought nearly broke us. The year Rose got so sick we thought we might lose her. The year Daniel ran away because he was angry and we spent 2 days searching for him. Not even those, Samuel said firmly, because we got through them together. And they taught us things, made us stronger, made our love deeper. The hard times are part of the story, Penelope. They are part of what made us who we are. Penelope was quiet for a moment, then she said, I want you to know something, Samuel. I want you to know that if I had to go through that rockslide 100 times, I would do it. Because it brought me to you, and you are the best thing that ever happened to me. You are my hero, my partner, my best friend, and the love of my life. And I thank God every day that you heard my cries that night, that you did not give up on me, that you worked until dawn to set me free. Samuel felt tears prick at his eyes, something that happened more easily now that he was older. You set me free too, he said, his voice rough with emotion. I was so alone before I met you, so focused on just surviving that I forgot to really live. You taught me how to open my heart, how to love, how to be part of something bigger than myself. You gave me a family and a purpose and a reason to be grateful for every single day. So if anyone is the hero in this story, my love, it is you. They sat together as the sun sank below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and gold. The desert that had once seemed so harsh and unforgiving to Samuel now looked beautiful, softened by years of love and the knowledge that he was exactly where he belonged. As they grew older, Samuel and Penelope began to slow down, turning over more of the ranch operations to their children. Matthew took primary responsibility for the cattle operation, while Rose managed the horse training business that had grown far beyond what Penelope had started. Daniel, who had always been mechanically minded, began to bring modern equipment to the ranch, helping them adapt to the changing times. But Samuel and Penelope remained active and involved, still working every day, still partnering in the management of the ranch they had built together. They took long rides in the evenings when the heat of the day had passed, exploring the land they knew so well, but that still held surprises and beauty around every turn. On their 40th anniversary in 1924, their children and grandchildren, now numbering 8 grandchildren and 2 great-grandchildren, threw them a celebration that was talked about for years afterward. Nearly 200 people attended, testament to the respect and affection that Samuel and Penelope had earned in their community over the decades. During the celebration, Matthew stood up to make a toast. "My parents," he said, his voice carrying across the crowd, "are the finest people I have ever known. They have shown us all what love really means, what commitment really looks like. My father worked through the night to save my mother's life before they even knew each other's names. And every day since, they have continued to work for each other, to support each other, to choose each other over and over again. That is the legacy they have given us, and it is a legacy we hope to pass on to our own children. To Samuel and Penelope Quinn, the strongest, most loving couple we know." The crowd erupted in cheers and applause, and Samuel looked at Penelope with tears streaming down his face. She was crying too, laughing and crying at the same time, her hand tight in his. "We did good," Samuel whispered to her. "Did we not?" "We did better than good," Penelope whispered back. "We did extraordinary." As they moved into their 60s and then their 70s, Samuel and Penelope's health began to decline, as was natural with age. Samuel's back, which had never fully recovered from that night of heavy lifting so many years before, caused him increasing pain. Penelope developed arthritis in her legs, the old injuries from the rockslide finally catching up with her. But they faced these challenges as they had faced everything else in their life together, with courage and humor and unwavering support for each other. On days when Samuel's back was bad, Penelope would rub liniment into his muscles and tell him stories to distract him from the pain. On days when Penelope's legs ached and she struggled to walk, Samuel would carry her to her favorite chair and sit with her, holding her hand and reading to her from the books they both loved. Their children watched over them with loving care, making sure they were comfortable, that they had everything they needed. The ranch house was always full of family, with grandchildren stopping by to visit, to share their news, to seek advice from the patriarch and matriarch of the family. One evening in the spring of 1928, as Samuel and Penelope sat together on their porch watching yet another spectacular Arizona sunset, Penelope said quietly, "Samuel, I need to tell you something." "What is it, my love?" Samuel asked, immediately attentive to the serious tone in her voice. "I am not afraid to die," Penelope said. "I know that probably sounds strange, but I have been thinking about it lately, and I realize that I have had the most extraordinary life. I have been loved by the best man I have ever known. I have raised 3 wonderful children who have given me beautiful grandchildren and great-grandchildren. I have done work that mattered, work that I loved. I have lived long enough to see Arizona become a state, to see automobiles replace horses on the roads, to see the world change in ways I never imagined when I was young. And through it all, I have had you by my side. So no, I am not afraid. When my time comes, I will go peacefully, knowing I lived a full and beautiful life." Samuel felt his heart clench with fear at the thought of losing her, but he understood what she was saying. They were both old now in their 70s, and they had been blessed with long lives. Still, the thought of a world without Penelope was almost unbearable. "I am not ready to lose you," he said honestly. "I know it is selfish, but I need you, Penelope. I have needed you every day since the moment I met you." "And I need you," Penelope said, taking his hand. "But Samuel, listen to me. When the time comes and one of us has to go on without the other, we have to remember what we built together. We have to remember that love does not end with death. It lives on in our children, in our grandchildren, in the land we tended, in the lives we touched. We have created something that will last long after we are gone. That is our legacy. That is what gives meaning to all of this. Samuel pulled her close, holding her as tightly as he dared, afraid she might break in his arms. "I love you," he whispered fiercely. "I will love you forever. In this life and whatever comes after." "And I love you," Penelope said. "Always and forever." They were granted several more years together, years filled with quiet joy and the comfort of a love that had been tested and proven over decades. They watched more grandchildren grow up and start families of their own. They saw the ranch continue to prosper under their children's management. They celebrated their 45th anniversary surrounded by family, a smaller, quieter celebration than the 40th had been, but no less meaningful. In the winter of 1932, Penelope fell ill with pneumonia. Despite the best care that their family and the doctors could provide, she grew weaker. Samuel rarely left her side, holding her hand, talking to her about their life together, reminding her of all the beautiful moments they had shared. On a cold January morning, with Samuel holding her hand and their 3 children gathered around the bed, Penelope took her last breath. She was 72 years old and she died peacefully, surrounded by love. Samuel was devastated. For weeks after Penelope's death, he moved through the world like a ghost, functioning but not really living. His children worried about him, tried to draw him back into life, but Samuel felt like half of himself had been torn away. It was Matthew who finally got through to him. "Papa," he said one evening, sitting with Samuel on the porch where he and Penelope had spent so many hours together. "Mama would not want this. She would not want you to give up, to stop living. She would want you to remember the joy, to celebrate the life you had together, to keep going for all of us who love you." Samuel looked at his son, this man who looked so much like him but who had his mother's kind eyes. "I know," he said quietly. "I know you are right. It is just so hard. For almost 50 years she was there. She was my partner, my best friend, my reason for everything. And now she is gone, and I do not know how to be in this world without her." "You do not have to be without her," Matthew said gently. "She is still here, Papa. She is in this ranch that you built together. She is in Rose's horses and in Daniel's innovations and in me and in all your grandchildren and great-grandchildren. She is in every sunset you watch from this porch and every memory you carry in your heart. She is not really gone. Not as long as we remember her and the love she gave us." Samuel felt tears streaming down his face, but for the first time since Penelope's death, they were not entirely tears of grief. There was healing in them too, acceptance. "Thank you, son," he said. "Thank you for reminding me of what your mother taught us, that love does not end, that it lives on." Samuel lived for 5 more years after Penelope's death. He was not as vibrant as he had been when she was alive, but he found a kind of peace, a way to carry on. He spent time with his family, told his grandchildren and great-grandchildren stories about their grandmother, about the night he had found her under the rocks, and how that night had changed both of their lives forever. He rode out often to that spot where the rockslide had occurred, where their story had begun. It was his way of feeling close to Penelope, of remembering not just the fear and the hard work of that night, but the beginning of the greatest love he had ever known. On a warm May evening in 1937, almost exactly 54 years after the night he had heard Penelope's cries and worked through the night to free her, Samuel Quinn died peacefully in his sleep at the age of 84. He was found the next morning by Rose, who had come to check on him, with a small smile on his face as if he had seen something beautiful in his dreams. They buried Samuel next to Penelope in the small cemetery outside Douglas, under the wide Arizona sky they had both loved. The entire community turned out for the funeral, paying respects to a man who had lived with integrity and honor, who had loved deeply and been loved in return. At the graveside, Rose spoke for the family. "Our parents," she said, her voice strong despite her tears, "lived a love story for the ages. It began with an act of courage and compassion, with my father refusing to give up even when the task seemed impossible. It grew into a partnership that built not just a ranch, but a family, a legacy that continues in all of us standing here today. They taught us that love is not just a feeling but a choice, something you have to work at every single day. They taught us that the greatest things in life come from caring for others, from being willing to sacrifice for those you love. They taught us that even the hardest circumstances can lead to the most beautiful outcomes if you refuse to give up, if you keep fighting, if you keep loving. We will miss them both more than words can express, but we will honor them by living the lessons they taught us, by loving as they loved, by building on the foundation they laid." Years later, Matthew's grandson, Samuel's great-great-grandson, would stand in the main room of the ranch house and look at the old photograph hanging on the wall. It showed Samuel and Penelope on their 40th anniversary, standing together in front of the house, his arm around her waist, both of them smiling at the camera with joy and contentment radiating from their faces. Below the photograph was a brass plaque that told their story, the story that had become legend in the family. It told of the night Samuel Quinn heard a woman's cries from under fallen rocks, how he worked through the night to set her free, and how that act of courage and compassion had led to one of the great love stories of the American West. It told of 50 years of partnership, of building a ranch and raising a family, of facing hardships and celebrating triumphs together. It told of a love that had literally moved mountains and had created a legacy that lived on generations later. The young man reached out and touched the photograph gently, thinking about the great-great-grandparents he had never met but whose story had shaped his family's history. He thought about the choices we make, the moments that change our lives forever, the courage it takes to stop and help a stranger, the work required to build something lasting. And he understood, perhaps for the first time, what his father had always told him about the photograph and the story it represented. That true love is not just about romance or passion, though those things matter. True love is about showing up, about doing the hard work, about refusing to give up even when everything seems impossible. True love is about partnership and sacrifice and choosing each other every single day, through all the challenges and joys that life brings. Samuel and Penelope Quinn had lived that kind of love, and their story would continue to inspire their descendants for generations to come. In a world that often felt harsh and unforgiving, their story was a reminder that miracles could happen, that love could bloom in the most unlikely circumstances, and that one act of courage and compassion could change not just 2 lives, but the lives of everyone who came after. The ranch still stood, still prospered under the management of Samuel and Penelope's descendants. The horses still ran in the corrals that Penelope had designed. The cattle still grazed on the land that Samuel had loved. And on quiet evenings when the sun set over the Arizona desert in a blaze of color, it was easy to imagine Samuel and Penelope sitting together on that porch, hand in hand, looking out over everything they had built together, everything they had created from courage and love, and an unwavering commitment to each other. Their story had ended as all stories must, but the love they had shared lived on, eternal and unbreakable, a testament to the power of the human heart and the extraordinary things that can happen when someone hears another's cries for help and chooses to answer. No matter the cost, no matter how long it takes, no matter how hard the work might be. Samuel Quinn had heard Penelope Martinez cry out from under the fallen rocks on that May evening in 1883. He had worked through the night to set her free, and in doing so, he had set them both free to love, to build, to create a life together that would stand as an example of what love at its finest could achieve. That was their legacy. That was their gift to the world, and it was a gift that would never be forgotten.